Too old, I repeated, staring at Marcus Bennett across his polished mahogany desk. My voice was surprisingly steady despite the rage building inside me. After 15 years of dedicated service, that's your reason. Marcus leaned back in his leather chair, a practiced look of sympathy on his face that didn't reach his cold blue eyes. Victoria, let's be honest. The tech industry moves fast. We need someone more dynamic, someone who can keep up with the pace. I was 53, not dead, and I'd just finished leading the most successful project launch in the company's history. But there I sat, being patronized by a man 20 years my junior, a man whose career I'd helped build. The severance package is generous, he continued, sliding a folder across the desk. 3 months' pay, health insurance through the end of the year. It's more than fair. I didn't touch the folder. Instead, I thought about the drawer in my home office, filled with 15 years of carefully preserved documents. Letters, emails, memos, evidence of every questionable decision, every unethical move Marcus had made on his climb to the top, including the letter he thought he'd destroyed 5 years ago, the one that could bring his entire empire crumbling down. Is this decision final? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. Years of practice had taught me how to hide my thoughts behind a mask of professional composure. Marcus nodded, already reaching for his phone, dismissing me from his mind. HR will help you with the paperwork. Security will escort you to clear out your desk. I stood up, smoothing my blazer. Very well. Thank you for the opportunity to work here, Marcus. The words tasted bitter in my mouth, but I forced them out anyway. He glanced up, surprised by my calm acceptance. For a moment, I saw uncertainty flicker across his face. Good. Let him wonder. As I walked out of his office for the last time, my mind was already racing with possibilities. I'd spent years watching, waiting, documenting. Now it was time to use what I gathered. The security guard who escorted me to my desk was Tommy, a kind man who'd always greeted me with a smile. I'm sorry about this, Ms. Reynolds, he said quietly as I packed my personal items into a cardboard box. It's not right, what they're doing. I gave them a small smile. Everything happens for a reason, Tommy. My colleagues watched from behind their computer screens as I packed, their faces a mix of pity and discomfort. None of them knew that my desk had been cleared of anything important weeks ago, when I first noticed the signs of what was coming. The subtle exclusion from meetings, the younger employees being copied on my projects, Marcus's increasingly condescending tone. Jessica, my young assistant, approached with tears in her eyes. Victoria, I can't believe they're doing this. You're the best manager we've ever had. I hugged her gently. Keep your head up, Jess, and keep documenting everything like I taught you. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. She'd been my protege, and she knew some of my methods, if not my reasons. The drive home was surreal. 15 years, ended in a 15-minute meeting. But as I pulled into my driveway, a sense of calm settled over me. I'd known this day was coming, I prepared for it meticulously. Inside my house, I went straight to my home office. The room was simple but elegant, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a vintage desk I'd restored myself. I opened the bottom drawer, pulled out a false bottom, and lifted out a thick accordion file. 15 years of evidence, organized by date and potential impact. But the crown jewel was the letter from 5 years ago, when Marcus had made his biggest mistake. He'd written it late one night, slightly drunk and feeling invincible after closing a major deal. The letter detailed exactly how he'd manipulated the numbers, shifted funds, and deceived the board. He tried to destroy it the next morning, but I'd already made copies. I set the letter aside and opened my laptop. Time to start organizing my evidence, preparing for the moment Marcus would realize what I had. It might take weeks or months, but eventually he would remember. And when he did, I would be ready. My phone buzzed, a text from Jessica. They're already interviewing replacements, all under 35. I smiled, screenshotting the message. More evidence for my collection. Then I opened my email and began drafting messages to key board members. Not to send yet, but to have ready. Each one would be perfectly crafted, revealing just enough to create panic without showing my full hand. As the sun set outside my window, I felt a sense of purpose I hadn't experienced in years. Marcus thought he was setting me out to pasture, forcing me into an early retirement. Instead, he'd finally given me the freedom to act. I picked up the letter, reading it again, although I'd memorized every word. Marcus's handwriting was messy, betraying his emotional state when he'd written it. The details were damning, not just for him, but for half the executive team. Too old, I muttered, putting the letter back in its hiding place. We'll see about that. That night, I slept better than I had in months. The weight of pretending, of playing a loyal employee while gathering evidence, was finally lifted. Now I could focus on the next phase of my plan. The following morning, I woke up early and went for a walk in my neighborhood. The spring air was crisp, carrying the scent of blooming flowers. As I walked, I thought about all the younger employees who'd been pushed out before me, the ones who didn't have the foresight or opportunity to gather evidence like I had. When I returned home, there were 3 missed calls from Marcus's secretary and an email about exit paperwork. I ignored them all. Let them wait. I had waited 15 years. They could wait a few days. Instead, I sat down at my desk and began writing a detailed timeline of every significant event I documented. Each entry was cross-referenced with the evidence I collected: emails, memos, photos, recordings of meetings. It was a tapestry of corruption, woven so tightly that pulling any single thread would cause the whole thing to unravel. Around noon, my doorbell rang. It was Jessica, holding a bag of takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant. "I brought lunch," she said, her eyes red from crying. I couldn't stay there today, watching them celebrate like they'd done something good. I let her in, leading her to the kitchen. "Celebrating, are they?" She nodded, unpacking the food. "Marcus took the executive team to that fancy steakhouse downtown. They're calling it a restructuring celebration. It's disgusting." I made a note to add this to my timeline. Every detail mattered, no matter how small. "Victoria," Jessica said hesitantly, "what are you going to do?" I took a bite of pad thai, considering my answer carefully. For now, nothing. Sometimes the best action is patience. She looked confused but didn't press further. Smart girl. The less she knew, the better protected she would be when everything finally came to light. After Jessica left, I spent the afternoon organizing my digital files. Every piece of evidence was backed up in multiple locations: cloud storage, external hard drives, even a safe deposit box at my bank. Marcus might be tech-savvy, but I'd learned long ago never to keep all my eggs in one digital basket. That evening, I received my first LinkedIn message from a concerned colleague. "Just heard what happened. This is outrageous. The whole department is in shock." More messages followed, each one expressing disbelief and support. I responded graciously to each one, maintaining my professional demeanor. Every message was screenshot and added to my files. The pattern of age discrimination was establishing itself without any effort on my part. As I prepared for bed that night, my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. "Victoria, it's Marcus. Just wanted to check that you received the severance paperwork. Please sign and return it by Friday, and I hope there are no hard feelings. You understand this is just business." I played the message twice, then saved it. His voice had a slight tremor, barely noticeable unless you knew what to listen for. He was nervous, though he probably didn't even realize why yet. Lying in bed, I thought about the years I'd spent building my case. The late nights copying documents, the accidental recordings of damning conversations, the careful cultivation of allies throughout the company. It had required patience, attention to detail, and the kind of wisdom that only comes with age. "Too old," I whispered into the darkness, smiling. "Your mistake, Marcus. Your biggest mistake." Sleep came easily again, filled with dreams of justice long delayed but not denied. In my experience, revenge was a dish best served not just cold, but meticulously prepared. The next few days passed in a blur of administrative tasks and planning. I ignored the severance paperwork, letting it sit unopened on my desk. Each day of delay would make Marcus more anxious, though he didn't yet know why. I spent my time organizing, preparing, waiting. The pieces were all in place. Now it was just a matter of timing. Like a chess player setting up the perfect endgame, I knew that patience was my greatest weapon. And somewhere in the back of Marcus's mind, a clock was ticking. Soon he would remember that letter, and everything would change. But for now, I waited, letting him enjoy his false sense of victory. After all, I had nothing but time. And contrary to what Marcus believed, my age wasn't a weakness. It was my greatest strength. Because while youth might bring energy and ambition, age brings something far more valuable: the wisdom to know exactly when and how to strike. 3 months after my firing, the first crack in Marcus's confidence appeared. I was having coffee at my favorite cafe when Jessica called. "Victoria," she whispered, her voice trembling with excitement. "Something's happening. Marcus just had a complete meltdown in the executive meeting." I stirred my latte calmly. "Oh? What kind of meltdown?" "He was reviewing some old files for the upcoming audit, and suddenly he went pale. Like ghost white. He started asking about document retention policies and who had access to his old correspondence. Then he locked himself in his office for 2 hours." I smiled into my coffee. Right on schedule. The annual audit was approaching, and Marcus had finally remembered the letter. The drunken confession he thought he'd destroyed 5 years ago. "How interesting," I said mildly. "Keep me posted." Later that afternoon, the first call came. Marcus's number flashed on my phone screen. I let it ring through to voicemail. "Victoria, it's Marcus. Listen, I've been thinking about how things ended, and I'd like to discuss it, perhaps over dinner. Call me back." I didn't. Instead, I went to my home office and pulled out the letter in question. The paper had yellowed slightly with age, but Marcus's scrawled handwriting was still clear as day. The contents were even more damning than I remembered. Detailed descriptions of fraudulent accounting practices, insider trading, and systematic discrimination. 2 more calls came that evening. I ignored them both. The next morning, I drove to my bank and added another document to my safe deposit box. A detailed account of Marcus's recent behavior, witnessed and signed by Jessica. Every reaction, every panicked question about old documents meticulously recorded. When I returned home, there was an email from Marcus. "Victoria, I hope you're doing well. I've been reflecting on our working relationship and feel we parted on unfortunate terms. Perhaps we could meet to discuss potential consulting opportunities. Your experience would be valuable to us. Best regards, Marcus." I screenshot the email and added it to my evidence file. The contrast between this tone and his dismissive attitude 3 months ago would make an interesting exhibit. That afternoon, I had lunch with Barbara, a board member I cultivated a friendship with over the years. She didn't know about my evidence, but she knew injustice when she saw it. "The company's not the same without you," she said, sipping her wine. "Marcus is acting strangely. Paranoid. Yesterday he asked for access to all archived correspondence from 5 years ago." I raised an eyebrow. 5 years ago specifically? How odd. Barbara leaned forward. "There are whispers about the upcoming audit. Discrepancies in old reports. Marcus keeps saying everything's fine." But she shrugged meaningfully. I listened sympathetically, asking just the right questions to keep her talking. Every piece of information was another thread in my web. The next week brought more calls, more emails, each one increasingly desperate. Marcus went from offering consulting work to hinting at a potential position on the board. I maintained my silence. Finally, he showed up at my house. I was in my garden when his Mercedes pulled into my driveway. He stepped out, looking less polished than usual. His tie was slightly askew and dark circles shadowed his eyes. "Victoria," he called out, trying to sound casual. "I've been trying to reach you." I set down my gardening tools and stood slowly, brushing dirt from my hands. "Yes, I saw your calls. I've been busy enjoying my retirement. You know, at my age, it's important to rest." He flinched at the subtle jab but pressed on. "Look, I think we got off on the wrong foot. The company misses you. I miss your institutional knowledge." Ah, there it was. Not my skills, not my leadership, but my knowledge. What I might know. "How thoughtful," I replied. "But I'm quite content here with my garden. Amazing how much wisdom you can gain working with the earth. Everything leaves traces, doesn't it? Like these flowers, even when you think they're gone, the roots remain, waiting for the right moment to bloom again." Marcus shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting to my house. "Victoria, I think we need to talk." "About?" "Old times. Old documents." I picked up my gardening shears, watching him take a small step back. "Old documents? You'll have to be more specific." I kept very thorough records during my 15 years at the company. It was one of the advantages of my experience. "There might have been a letter," he said quietly, "from around 5 years ago, after the Miller account." I tilted my head. "A letter? I handled so much correspondence over the years. Was this letter important?" Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the mild temperature. If you have it, if you happen to keep it, we could make arrangements, very generous arrangements. Are you trying to bribe me, Marcus? I asked pleasantly, setting down the shears. That doesn't seem wise, given the circumstances. His face hardened. I don't know what game you're playing, but… I'm not playing any games, I interrupted. I'm just an old woman tending her garden. But you know what they say about age bringing wisdom. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have plants to water. I turned my back on him, a calculated risk that paid off. He stood there for a moment longer, then retreated to his car. As he drove away, I allowed myself a small smile. The seeds of doubt were firmly planted. That evening, Jessica called again. Marcus had it searching through old backup files all afternoon. He's freaking out. Is he? I said mildly. How unfortunate. By the way, Jess, remember to forward me those emails about the new hiring policies. The ones specifically mentioning age preferences. Already done, she replied. Victoria, when are you going to do something? I looked out my window at the garden where I confronted Marcus. Everything has its season, Jessica, even justice. The next day, I received a formal letter from Marcus's personal attorney, offering to resolve any outstanding issues for a substantial sum. I filed it with my other evidence without responding. 3 days later, Marcus called again. This time, I answered. Hello, Marcus. Victoria, he said, his voice strained. Please, that letter. I know you have it. Name your price. I let the silence stretch for a moment. It's interesting, isn't it? How something as simple as a letter can suddenly become so valuable, almost as valuable as 15 years of experience. What do you want? He demanded. Want? I'm exactly where I want to be, Marcus. Enjoying my retirement, tending my garden, organizing my files. I have so many files, you know. Letters, emails, recordings. It's amazing what accumulates over 15 years. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. Recordings? Oh yes, I said cheerfully. I may be old, but I learned to adapt to new technology, another advantage of experience. Why are you doing this? I'm not doing anything, Marcus. I'm simply being thorough. Methodical. Careful. All those qualities you dismiss as being too… What was the word? Ah yes, dynamic. The line went quiet for so long, I thought you hung up. Finally he spoke again, his voice barely a whisper. How many other letters are there? I smiled into the phone. Which ones are you worried about? After he hung up, I went to my office and began preparing the next phase of my plan. Marcus's panic was satisfying, but it wasn't enough. Not after what he'd done to me and so many others. I opened my laptop and began drafting emails to each board member, carefully crafted messages that would hint at what I knew without revealing everything. Like dropping pebbles in a pond, each one would create ripples, spreading doubt and uncertainty through the company's leadership. The game was entering its final phase, and I had all the pieces in place. Marcus thought he forced me into retirement, but he'd actually given me exactly what I needed: time, freedom, and motivation. I picked up the original letter, reading it one more time. Soon, very soon, it would be time to show my full hand. But not yet. Like my garden, this revenge needed time to fully bloom. For now, I would let Marcus stew in his own fear, wondering just how many letters I had, just how many recordings existed. Let him lose sleep over what might be revealed in the upcoming audit. After all, I had nothing but time, and I intended to use every minute of it. The annual shareholders meeting was scheduled for a bright Thursday morning in September, exactly 1 year after my firing. I'd chosen this day carefully. Timing, as always, was everything. The night before, I couldn't sleep, not from nervousness, but from anticipation. I sat in my garden, watching the stars and thinking about how far I'd come. My phone buzzed constantly with desperate messages from Marcus. Please, we can work this out. Name your price. Think about what you're doing. I let each one go unanswered. The time for negotiations had passed long ago. That morning, I dressed with particular care. A crisp charcoal suit, pearl earrings, and my mother's vintage Cartier watch. As I applied my lipstick, I thought about all the people Marcus had pushed out before me. The women over 40, the men nearing retirement age, all discarded like outdated equipment. Jessica met me in the parking lot of the corporate headquarters, clutching a thick manila envelope. Everything's ready, she whispered. The board members all got your email this morning. They're in a panic. I nodded, taking the envelope. And Marcus? Locked in his office is at 6 a.m. He's called his lawyers 3 times already. The email I'd sent to the board was simple but effective. A meeting request with a single attachment, a scanned copy of one of Marcus's lesser indiscretions. Not the big letter, just enough to prove I had evidence of wrongdoing. The subject line read, "Additional documents for today's meeting." The lobby was chaos when I walked in. Board members huddled in corners, whispering urgently. Executives hurried back and forth, their faces tight with stress. Several people stopped and stared as I passed, but no one tried to stop me. Barbara intercepted me by the elevators. "Victoria," she hissed, "what's in those documents you mentioned?" I smiled warmly. "Let's discuss it in the meeting, shall we?" The shareholders' meeting was held in the grand conference room on the top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a spectacular view of the city, though today no one was admiring the scenery. The room was packed, tension thick in the air. Marcus sat at the head of the table, trying to maintain his composure, but I could see the slight tremor in his hands as he shuffled papers. When I walked in, his face went pale. "Victoria," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "This is a private meeting." I pulled out a chair and sat down. "Actually, as a shareholder, I have every right to be here. I may have been fired, but I never sold my shares in the company." Before he could respond, I began distributing copies of a thick document to everyone present. "I've prepared some materials for review," I said pleasantly. "I believe you'll find them quite illuminating." The room fell silent as people began reading. I watched their faces: shock, disbelief, anger. The document detailed 15 years of systematic age discrimination, financial misconduct, and corporate fraud. Each claim was supported by emails, memos, recordings, and photographs. And at the center of it all was Marcus's infamous letter, its contents even more damning in the harsh light of day. This is lies," Marcus sputtered, but his protest sounded weak even to his own ears. "Is it?" I asked, my voice carrying across the silent room. "Every document is authentic, every recording verified." I believe the SEC would be particularly interested in the section about the Miller account, and the Department of Labor might have questions about your hiring practices. One of the major shareholders, a stern woman named Eleanor, looked up from the papers. "Marcus, is this true? Did you really fire 38 employees over the age of 50 in the past year alone?" "It was restructuring," he stammered. "Cost-cutting measures. And replace them all with employees under 35? I added helpfully, "at higher salaries." The board chairman cleared his throat. "Marcus, I think you need to step out while we discuss this." "You can't be serious," Marcus protested. "She's just a disgruntled ex-employee." I stood up slowly, commanding the room's attention. "No, Marcus, I'm someone who watched you systematically destroy careers and lives because you thought age made us worthless. I'm someone who had the wisdom and patience to gather evidence while you got sloppy and arrogant. And now I'm someone who's going to watch you face the consequences." The next 2 hours were a blur of heated discussions, legal consultations, and hastily called votes. By the end, Marcus was suspended pending investigation, and the board had voted to appoint an interim CEO, Barbara. As security escorted Marcus out, he tried one last time. "Victoria, please. We can still work something out." I walked up to him, close enough to see the defeat in his eyes. "You know what they say about wisdom coming with age? It's true. I learned to wait, to watch, to document everything. And now you get to learn what it feels like to be pushed out of the company you helped build." The aftermath was exactly as I planned. The SEC launched a full investigation. The Department of Labor opened an inquiry into the company's hiring practices. Marcus faced criminal charges for financial fraud. 1 month later, I sat in my garden enjoying the autumn sunshine. My phone rang. "Barbara, the board's reviewed your proposal," she said. "They want you to head the new Ethics and Compliance Department. Full autonomy, direct board reporting, and complete authority to implement age-inclusive hiring policies." I smiled, watching a butterfly land on one of my roses. "Tell them I accept." "Victoria," Barbara added, "I have to ask, why did you wait so long? You could have exposed Marcus years ago." "Sometimes," I said, thinking of all the lives Marcus had impacted, all the careers he derailed, Justice needs time to mature. Like a garden, you can't rush it. You have to nurture it, tend it, and wait for the right moment to harvest. After hanging up, I walked through my garden, touching the flowers I planted the day after my firing. They had grown strong and beautiful, just like my revenge. Marcus had thought age was a weakness, but he'd learned the hard way that with age comes patience, wisdom, and the ability to play the long game. The next morning, as I walked into the office, my new office, I passed the security desk where Tommy still worked. He grinned and gave me a thumbs up. Jessica was waiting by my door, beaming. "Welcome back, boss." I smiled, touching the nameplate on my door. It's good to be back. Now, let's make some changes around here. My first act as Ethics and Compliance Director was to implement a comprehensive age discrimination training program. My second was to review all terminations from the past 5 years, offering reinstatement to those who had been unfairly pushed out. Marcus's letter hung framed on my wall, a reminder that patience and wisdom will always triumph over arrogance and discrimination. Below it, I placed a small plaque with a quote I'd chosen carefully. "Age is an issue of mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter." As I settled into my new role, I thought about all the other Victorias out there, experienced professionals being pushed aside because of their age. My story would give them hope, show them that sometimes the best revenge isn't swift or dramatic, but patient and methodical. The company flourished under the new leadership. Our inclusive hiring practices brought in a diverse range of talent, combining the energy of youth with the wisdom of experience. We became a model for other corporations, proving that success doesn't have an age limit. 1 year to the day after the shareholders' meeting, I received a letter from Marcus. He was awaiting trial, his reputation in tatters, his career destroyed. The letter was an apology, probably advised by his lawyers, but I appreciated the irony. Another letter, another turning point. I filed it away with all my other evidence, a final piece in the story of how patience and wisdom had triumphed over discrimination and arrogance. Then I went back to work because there was still so much to do. After all, I wasn't too old, I was just getting started.